Okay, looks like YouTube is giving me the green light. I believe that means I am live. Sorry for the cough at the beginning there. I think I'm pretty much over whatever was ailing me for the past week or so. It's a little weird though, because like I felt like I was completely over it, and then I went out with some friends and just talking with them over like an afternoon, eating together. It started making my throat sore again, and I did that 2 days in a row, and then the third day my throat was sore the whole next day, and I had to like just kind of chill for a little bit. So I don't know. Hopefully I haven't like developed some like strange like throat condition or something. I'm assuming this will go away soon. But I mean, it feels completely normal most of the time. But if I talk too much, all of a sudden I start coughing a bunch. So I don't know. I'll give it another week or so, and hopefully it will be done by then. But if you have read the title, the Friday night art stream today, which I think I'm going to call Finesse from now on. I don't know how to pronounce it, but I'm thinking F-N-A-S, you know, Finesse. I know it kind of reminds me a little bit of Finis. There's a mod in Skyrim for your Skyrim modders that use Finis for your animations, but without the I's, it'd just be Finesse. I don't know. We'll figure it out, but in the future, I may start using just F-N-A-S as an abbreviation in the thumbnails or whatnot. But so the kind of idea for today is that I'm going to be drawing my Diablo 3 character, and I know that this is a fairly old game at this point, and but for some reason I just started playing it again recently, and I really love RPGs, so I think I'm gonna start putting some more RPG related content up here. I put a tabletop like talk up a couple weeks ago. And I don't know. It didn't seem like a lot of people really responded to it. But I may still start putting up some stuff from time to time. I'm gonna try not to focus so much on like the straight up like D&D like specifics. I think I want more general topics like what is a table RPG, like my experiences of playing it and stuff like that. Things that people can relate even if they haven't played D&D themselves. But that's been a big part of my life, and it's kind of like a big part of my inspiration actually for doing art as well. So I kind of want to touch on that a little bit more in the future. But today we're not talking about TRPGs or tabletop RPGs. We're talking about action RPGs or hack and slash ARPGs, and specifically Diablo 3. But yeah, we'll get into that topic a little bit later. But for now, let's just get this drawing started. So let's see here. Let me just get the chat in the corner of my screen so I can kind of see it, or the corner of my second screen. If I put it like this, see, I have a bad habit of not noticing when people put into the chat because I get kind of wrapped up in what I'm doing. So I'm gonna try to get this in an area where I can catch it in my peripheral view. I think that'll work. Thing is, I don't want OBS to cover it up. Is that the chat menu? It looks like it. Yeah, okay, so that I should be able to see there. Cool. Okay, so where were we? So I have all these screenshots that I've been taking sporadically while I've been playing Diablo. And so let's kind of take a look at these. I couldn't decide exactly which character I wanted to draw, but let's just go ahead and introduce these. So first off, this is my my monk character. And I was playing initially in adventure mode. I don't remember why, but for some reason I don't. Because I beat the game a long time ago, with a friend around the time when it came out, and actually I beat it twice. I played it once on my own when it came out, and I just played through and I beat it, and I was pretty satisfied with that experience. I know there was a lot of like stuff that people were upset about it when it first came out because of the the online marketplace and things like that. But for me, I didn't come to it from Diablo 2. Diablo 3 was actually my first Diablo game. So for me, I was just like, okay, well, let me just enjoy this like action hack and slash game. And you know, I played through it once, and I was like, okay, that was fun, and then I was done. I wasn't really going for the long haul, as it were, of like collecting all the legendaries and whatnot. So for me, it was fairly enjoyable. But then I found a friend who actually came from the Diablo 2 days, and he played a lot of other games, and he kind of introduced me to the intricacies of action RPGs, and I played through it with him again, and we played in hardcore mode, which is the first time I did that, and I was actually pretty resistant to that at first. I should probably talk about that a little bit more after I got something to actually move my my pencil with. So first off, let's just figure out what we're doing here. We got, so this is my monk character, and yeah, you know what? Let's just let's go one by one, just kind of sketch this out and see if this feels right or not. Kind of warm up a little bit, and I'll look at the other screenshots as we go. All right, so here's my monk character. I could probably get rid of a lot of this unneeded information. Just cut it down to like this, maybe. There we go. Put it up there. And you know what? I really hate starting from nothing. I mean, so if I was, I'm gonna be kind of honest here. So if I was in school back in the day, you know, they'd always tell you that you should just look at it while you're drawing because you learn more that way. Like I should just be able to just kind of look over at this and be like, okay, let me just see if I could mimic this and have like, okay, here's her head there, right? And then here's like her body's like this. Yeah, this is really hard to draw in a way that I'm not moving away from the mic. I'll figure this out. But yeah, they kind of teach you that like, yeah, you should just look at it and draw it like so. And I mean, there's something to that, and that's definitely what you should do when you're trying to learn, when you're studying, and like in your practices, like if you're doing like what he calls it, live studies, or they call it desan in Japan. I'm not sure what language that came from. What do we call that in America, or in like West? I don't know. I don't know if it's like a European term or something. Desan. Do you guys use desan in America? I don't know. Like I never heard that when I was in art school in America, but here in Japan they use it all the time. I don't know if that's like French or like some other language. I don't know, but basically it means like live studies, or like human, what do you call it, anatomy study or something like that. Like getting your proportions and stuff right. So see, like the issue here now where you can see that the center of balance isn't quite right. But anyway, so yeah, this is what I would do when I'm studying. But I'm just gonna be honest here. When I'm at work and I'm actually just working as like a concept, as sort of like a concept artist, it's more important just to be able to get ideas down quickly. So I'm not tracing it. I'm just kind of getting my. I don't want to start with an empty, what'd you call it? With an empty screen. It seems like I waste a lot of time, and it's kind of intimidating to have like a white screen. So for me, it's a lot easier just to kind of be like, okay, let's just block these in here real quick, you know, just so that I'm not starting from completely nothing and I have an idea of where I'm coming from. And you know, my good friend Tony from Sketchflix. Check him out. He has a really cool channel, and he did a video recently where he was talking about stuff he wished he knew as a beginner artist. And one of the things that he mentioned that is really true is you gotta steal like a pro, you know. So you don't want to just like copy people, but what you want to do is you want to take aspects of things and be able to incorporate them well. So there you go. So I have this. Now I'm not starting from nothing. I have something to kind of like just manipulate. And so this is the part where you're saying steal like a pro. You don't just like take that and then try to copy it as is. Like I'm looking at this now and like, okay, so now I have something to work with, but I don't really like these proportions that much. Like these legs seem a little too big in my opinion. So I mean, it could be just like the character might have been made to look a little bit taller, or it could be like the perspective. I don't think it's perspective. I think it's a straight on, but it didn't look quite right to me. So I'm changing the legs a little bit, and so now I can start messing with this and making it more like what I want. So it's sort of like, instead of just starting from like a blank piece of a blank white sheet of paper, now it's more like I have a mound of clay that I could kind of like work with and kind of try to get to the shape that I wanted. And let's she's gonna be holding this here. And other things that was in his video was like, you know, when you're younger, you hear don't use reference, and that's a load of crap. Like, I was actually listening to some there was some part-time workers. How did you say that? Not so, I guess part-time. Yeah, they're just not full-time workers. They aren't contracted with our company, but well, I mean, there's a contract, but they aren't full-time workers at at our company. They just they were just there to kind of like learn, almost like an internship in a way. So they're still in school, but they had like an agreement that they could come to the school, come to our work, and kind of work, you know, 2-3 days a week or something for like half a day. But yeah, I heard them talking during lunch, and they were talking about how they just don't seem to be getting any better. Like they draw and draw and draw, but like it doesn't seem to be getting much better. They don't seem to be getting much better. And one of the things that came up in their conversation was like, when you're drawing, like you draw from memory a lot, or not really from memory, but from your head. You just like kind of, you don't use reference. You do as much as you can without reference, and just try to like work through it. And they were saying how they weren't getting any better. And the thing there that you may not realize, like, it sounds like you're more hardcore if you don't use reference, but the truth is, if you're not using reference, that means that you oh hey K-Dash, sorry, I hope I didn't leave you too long without responding. See, I told you I'm not very good at checking my my comments. I gotta get better at that. I need to put that in a position where I can see better. So, but what was I saying? Yeah, so like the thing is though, if you don't use reference, what happens is you're just drawing whatever you've kind of made your root memory of. Like you have like a kind of a default idea of what a face looks like, or a default idea of like what the body proportions are or whatnot. And when you draw without reference, that doesn't change. You're just always working off of that default. So what you really need to do is you need to do with like I'm pretty sure it was John Silva that told me this. And if you don't know John Silva, look him up. It's John Silva, S-I-L-V-A, and he is an amazing artist. I met him in Japan a while back, and he's actually doing Twitch streams now. I saw him on Twitch the other day. So yeah, look him up. He's a really good artist. And one of the things he told me was like what he does is he tries to draw without reference, and he'll like struggle through it, and then he'll get reference, and then he'll fix all the things that were wrong with what he was doing without reference. And then after he's fixed that, then he'll try to draw without reference again. So that way he's actually how do I say, you're actually getting new information from the reference. So you're getting your study in, you're acquiring new knowledge while you're looking at the reference, right? But you're also kind of forcing yourself to remember the reference and to think about it even without looking at it. So that seems like a really good method. I really should do that more. I tend to lean on reference maybe a little too much, but I think the opposite of not using reference at all is also not particularly good. All right, so now I have a basic shape of her body there. See, I'm trying to figure out how I can look at this while still seeing. I think this needs to be on the left side because I'm right-handed, so it's weird. Like I was losing the reference while I was drawing. Right, there we go. That looks a bit better. Okay, cool. So next up, we want to put some of this armor on her. So let's get a kind of idea where the eyes are. Yeah, but I do recommend checking out Sketchflix's new video on, I think it was called 10 Things I Wish I Knew as a Beginner Artist. I'm probably going to do like a response video where I talk about 10 things that I wish I knew when I was a beginner artist too. But his video is really well done. Like you could tell there's a lot of editing involved. He's like animating it. He put like some animations into it and stuff, and a lot more editing than I would ever have the time to do. Okay, this is kind of an interesting armor. I can tell that it has some maybe Japanese inspiration, but this helmet is really out there. It's almost like an alien head. I think it's probably that's what they're going for. Hi, is this Photoshop or Corel Painter? This is actually Clip Studio Paint, which has quickly become my favorite drawing software. If you want, let me switch it so you can actually see the user interface. If you're not familiar with Clip Studio, 1 second. Let's go to the left screen. There you go. So now you should be able to see what the user interface looks like. I really don't need this timeline at the bottom. Let me get rid of that. POG timeline. Where's the timeline? Oh, window. There we go. Window timeline. Yeah, we don't need that. Okay, cool. So this has become pretty much my favorite, just because there's things that you can do in here that aren't as easy to do with Photoshop. With Painter, maybe it's kind of like a mix between Painter and Photoshop, because you know with Photoshop you have the thing where your colors go on top of each other, so you could have like oh yeah, I forgot I'm on a blue layer. So yeah, this is another thing that's really cool like this. This I'm actually drawing in black, but it's showing in blue because I put it as I guess we call it like a rough layer or something. So I click this button over here in the corner, and it switches like this. And I can actually just click that button and switch the color. So I can switch it to like, I don't know, like a pink color if I wanted, you know, just so that I know that this is kind of like a rough layer. And then once I feel like it's more finalized, I can just unclick that button, and then it'll be like basically like a line art. So that's a really cool feature. Also things like let's make a new layer. I can draw. You have the basic sort of functionality of Photoshop where you could draw a color and it's additive. It puts the color on top of it, and you could make that like transparent and whatnot. But then you also have, if I switch from, instead of using a pencil, if I use a brush, and let's say in brushes you have watercolor brushes, oil brushes, and like ink, and let's just switch to watercolor real quick, and maybe something like this. So now if I go to a watercolor brush, now I actually get the colors mixing, sort of like what you would get with Corel Paint. So you can kind of get that going as well. Doesn't seem to be doing it particularly well right now. Don't know why. Give me a second. Yeah, there you go. So you can see how the colors kind of mix together. There's different properties with each brush, so you kind of have to test out and see which brush does it best. But what I would often do is if I want to do a gradation, I would just put it down like as an oil brush, and then I would switch to the watercolor brush to kind of make it into a gradient, like so. And like if you're trying to do this in Photoshop with this type of gradient, it just seems like it's a lot more work, because in Photoshop it seems like what you have to do is you have to take, like, you have your flat color, and then you'd have to lower your opacity. How do I lower my opacity in here? I don't usually do that often. Where is it? Brush, Tebude. I know I can do it. Can I just press 8? Yeah. So you'd have to like lower your opacity, and then like Alt pick the color, and then put the next color, then Alt pick, and then it just like I used to do this in Photoshop back in the day, where I would just color, then Alt pick and Alt pick until it would make like a gradation. But it was just a lot more work than just having like a brush that you can just smooth things out with. And of course there is a smooth button in Photoshop, but it's really heavy. At least on my computer it seems to be really heavy, and it like just slows my computer down a lot whenever I try to use it. So, also other things about Clip Studio. I mean, I'm probably gonna have to do some more videos to talk about Clip Studio in particular, but I have there's a lot of perspective tools, which I have a couple videos about, where I talk about perspective. That just, you could set up like your horizon line and things, and it will actually guide your lines into the right perspective, which is really useful. There's the whole, this will be the last thing about it. You got me started talking about Clip Studio Paint. There's a lot to it, but there's just one last thing, is that you have regular layers and then you have vector layers. And if you use a vector layer, it actually stores your data as a vector, as opposed to the way that Photoshop does it as a I don't know if bitmap is correct, but it's storing vectors more like Illustrator. So for example, if you're doing line work, and there actually is like a inking brushes in here, which you don't necessarily have in Photoshop, where it actually behaves like Japanese inking brushes, where you can have like a G pen or a Maru pen and things like that. And so here I have my inking brush. And the thing that's cool about the vector layer is you can set it up so that say if I want to draw a circle, and then if I want a bunch of lines going through the circle, I could go like this. And let's say that I just wanted the lines to only be where the circle was. Well, if I just run my eraser through these, like if you see how I just have that one line of my eraser going through there, now if I let go, it actually deletes everything up to the intersection. Like it's actually programmed in there because it's a vector. It can tell where the lines are intersecting, so it deletes everything up to that intersection, which is really useful when you're like doing like what do you call it, like cubes and stuff, because you can just kind of casually throw in the lines like that without actually like slowing down or making sure that you're being very clean about your line endings, and then you can just click and just delete all these messy lines. So especially if you're doing inking work, I highly recommend Clip Studio. It's really good, particularly if you're doing a Japanese. Since I work in, I don't know if you know, but I work in Japan, so a lot of the work we do here involves like clean line work, and clean line work is kind of difficult to do. I wouldn't say difficult, it's just not as convenient in other softwares. Alright, so I don't know if I like the position of her leg here. Let's move this over here a little bit. And I'm not planning on this being an actual like finished drawing. Usually I would be very concerned about getting very clean lines and everything. I'm thinking this is going to be like a rough. So I don't know if you guys have seen my my video where I go through like my whole digital process. I forgot what it was called, but it's a series of like 4 different videos, and usually it starts with a with a couple roughs, and the roughs you're not really concerned about line work, or like keeping things neat. You're just concerned about getting the idea down. So I think I only have enough time to really do a rough today. And then after you've finished your rough, then you would go over that with cleaner line work, and then from the cleaner line work you would go on to like the coloring and whatnot. So I'm just kind of blocking in some of this. Now I'm wondering, it might actually be better not to do this linearly, because these are they're kind of blocked shapes, so it might be better if I actually just colored it. But here, we'll just get the basic shapes in, and then we'll go from there. What DPI are you using? That is a good question. And what do you recommend? Is your yes, that is correct. This is a monk. The Diablo 3 Diablo 3 character. This is a monk. I actually have 2 or 3 characters I was thinking about doing today. I just kind of started doing this one because it seemed like it was a good pose. But I was not decided about doing my monk or my my witch hunter. And I'll talk about my experience with those characters a little bit as I draw. But the next question was DPI, right? So DPI, right? I tend to do this thing where once I have like a canvas that I like, I just keep using that reusing that canvas over and over again and just saving it as a different name. And I do that so often that I kind of forget what my DPI was. But let me find out. Would that be under? I think it's under the size of the canvas, or is it the size of the image? I think size of the image. Yep. So it's 300 DPI. It's not really. I mean, so when you're working on something in a company, sometimes you'll have very specific guidelines about how they want you to make it, and you should actually ask them, because a lot of times your client may actually not even realize that that's a thing. So you might need to ask them, like, especially if it's part of a video game's workflow. Like, say for example, if I was doing items, like item icons for a game. Like I actually had this experience where I had my the kind of art supervisor guy who was giving me the assignment. He's just like, yeah, just draw these things. I was like, okay, well, what size do you want me to draw it in? He's like, what do you mean? It was like, you know, like what size are the other icons? And I had to actually remind him so that he would look it up, because he wasn't really thinking about that. But like that can be a big thing if it's a icon for a game, and like all the other icons are say, I don't know, like 400 by 300 pixels at like a 300 DPI, and you draw yours at like I don't know, 50 by 60 with like 72 DPI, then that's going to make your pictures look really bad compared to the other ones. So for your own personal drawing, I don't think it's not a big deal. Just see what feels right. So like the other day I tend to draw very small at first. So I even use like 72 DPI a lot, because I don't know if you guys realize it, but for the most part, all the images you see online, they generally don't go larger than 72 DPI. So if it's something you're just going to put on a website or something, 72 DPI is pretty safe. But when you're drawing, sometimes maybe you're getting into like some really details, and like say I was like this and I was trying to draw a face, and I'm like drawing like this, and I'm like, I can't seem to really get the details of this face in. It's like I'm trying to get this face, but it's not working. Like that means that your DPI is not good enough. So at that point, I would just go and I would bump it up. 300 is generally as high as I would go. I wouldn't go much higher than that. Maybe 350 or 320. When I was in school, I think they said that it was weird. Like I think they said that color images, they didn't say that you need to go. They would say that like 150 or something was good, but if it was a black and white, they actually said that black and white you wanted like 320 or 350. So they wanted you to go higher with black and white. I'm not exactly sure why that was, but I just remember that that was something that I was like, what, really? Black and white takes more? I don't know. But yeah, in general, it's just a matter of your comfort level. Like whatever, if you feel like you're not getting enough detail, then you can bump it up. I would try to start very small at first, because and you can see right now, like I have a very huge canvas, but I'm drawing very small. And the reason why I do that is because if I was drawing this at full size, like if I had to bump this up like all the way up to here, because of how much like space I have here, I would be really tempted to like go in here and like really get all these details in here. Like, okay, let me get exactly how this works, or let me get this line exactly right. Like if I were to draw a line like this, I would feel like there's so much empty space that I have to deal with. So I'd be like, okay, let me try to like figure this out and figure that out, and I could spend like hours just in this one little area. And so this is, I mean, it's a personal preference, but for my workflow, I found that if I start very small, it actually speeds up my workflow, because I'm not as concerned with the details now, because my brush can't even fit into these small areas. So it's like I'm not thinking about trying to like get the specifics of how like the end of this part works or anything. I'm just getting the very large blocky areas, and then later on, once I'm okay with what I'm drawing, then I could bump it up to the full size and then start putting the details in. And there's another thing I was talking with the part-timers that were talking about getting better at art, is that when it's kind of the difference between an illustrator and a designer. When you're an illustrator, you gotta make these bigger, kind of exaggerate that a little bit. When you're an illustrator, you're trying to make the most beautiful piece of art that you can. Right, so you could spend a lot of time on details and kind of the specifics. But when you are working as a designer, and like as part of a workflow, especially like if you're making for games or something. Okay, I see your question. I'll get to that in a second. What was I saying? Yeah. So when you're a designer, you're only gonna have maybe a couple days to finish whatever you're working on. And sometimes you might not even have that. Like for example, when I was designing weapons or like enemy characters at sometimes, I would have to draw maybe up to like 9 or 10 items per or enemy characters or weapons per week. So that means you're probably doing like, or even like items, I would do like 3 items a day or so. So you don't have the time to really nitpick. You just want to get your general concepts out there as quickly as possible. And I don't know who said this, but someone said art is never finished; it's just abandoned. I think it was actually George Lucas, who said like a movie's never finished; it's just abandoned. Art's kind of the same way, where you're not going to be able to finish your art a lot as a designer. There's always going to be more you can do, but the point is that you have to get it as good as you can within the allotted time. And so what becomes more important than being good at art is being efficient. That becomes like the the king. Like a person who can draw really beautiful things, but it takes him a month, isn't going to get as much work as someone who can draw sufficient art within like a day or two, you know. So okay, let me get back to the comments. The black and white being high DPI probably for print. Yeah, that probably is, because it was actually I was studying manga at the time, so it was maybe because if you're doing like a manga, then that would be kind of linked to the printing, I would imagine. All right. Man, there's like just so many random details in this armor. It's like it's another difference between if you're doing an illustration versus a game design. Like every one of these bits of armor were designed by a person, and they probably spent like, I don't know, half a day or something on each one. And then there was like the 3D artist who added stuff in the texturing and things. So it's not like a manga where you're drawing a character over and over again. It's like one piece of armor. There probably was a lot of time invested into designing each one, so there's a lot of details. But let's talk a little bit about my characters. So this was my monk character, and so I had played the game when it first came out. I played it on my own and I beat it, and then I played again with a friend who was a little bit more hardcore into the ARPG genre. He taught me a lot of the ins and outs about like what makes ARPGs what they are. Because the first time I played it, I just kind of played it as like an adventure game. I don't know, it's sort of like you would play something like, I don't know, Devil May Cry or something, where you just kind of play through, you kill all the demons, and then you're done. You know, and I was like, okay, that was a fun time, but I didn't really get like the whole collecting all the legendaries and like the kind of like looting part of it as much. But then my friend kind of introduced me to hardcore. He introduced me to hardcore mode, and I've been loving playing in hardcore mode since then. It was tough at first because I remember the first time we played through, and the thing about like especially Diablo is you get to this kind of like lull where you feel like you're invincible more or less, because like none of the enemies seem to really lower your HP gauge at all. Like you just feel like you're completely owning everyone, and then all of a sudden you get to a boss that maybe you just kind of rush to without leveling up enough, and you're used to nothing ever hurting you, and then all of a sudden the boss is hurting you. And I think I was such a noob that I kind of forgot what button I had to press to like heal, or like to use my potion, because I never used my potion before hitting the boss. And by the boss I don't mean like the skeleton king guy or whatnot. I mean I think it was Beelzebub. What was the guy, the king of liars? Is it Aziel? I forgot. But I remember getting to him, and he was like dropping like area effects on the ground and stuff, and I was like losing my hit points, and I didn't understand why, and I was like, what's going on? And then I died, and so my character was like level 30 or something, and then it was hardcore mode, so I had to start over, and I felt like really depressed, like what the heck, like I've been playing forever and now my character is gone. But my friend's like, no, just try again, I'll level you back up or whatever. And then like I remember like we were trying to level up by like going to like really high level areas and like following his character around, and then my character would die again because he would get hit once in the high level area and die, and I was like, oh man, this is annoying. I don't think I like this hardcore mode. And yeah, it's looking all right. And so like that happened a couple times, like maybe twice. And so the last time I was like, I don't think I like this hardcore mode. I'll play one more time, and then if I die again, I'm gonna be done. And then that last time we actually made it all the way through, killed Diablo, and then we went through the expansion, Reaper of Souls, and we killed the Malthael, I think it was, and got through everything. And I was like, okay, that's cool. And I think so now I'm still kind of up in the air because I feel like there's like the hardcore mode doesn't quite fit the game well. In my opinion, like how do I say this? It feels like it's not balanced quite right. Like I like games like Dark Souls, where you definitely have a cost to your death, but I don't think that losing hundreds of hours of, well, not just hundreds of hours, but tens of hours of gameplay and then starting from zero again, like it doesn't feel quite right. Like maybe something more like Realm of the Mad God. I don't know if you guys ever played that. It's like a pixelated MMORPG type of game where you're running around shooting people, and if your character dies, it's permadeath. But then, while your character's alive, they earn what do you call it? They earn, I think it was called glory or honor or something, and that allows you to then use that to enhance your next character or unlock new classes and things. So it doesn't feel like you wasted your time. It feels like you actually progressed even though you died. Whereas with the with the Diablo hardcore mode, it's like you feel like you just died. Like there's no real progression. And like one thing my friend says, like, oh well, you can put characters, you can put items in your box or whatnot, and access the items with your next character. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of all right. But the problem is that oh, just in case you don't know what I'm doing right now, I just selected all the area outside of my character, and then I flipped the selection and filled in everything inside on a separate layer, so that I can just have a general outline. Okay. And now I'm just going to try to get a good silhouette. I'm actually going to lower the opacity of that first layer a little bit. There we go. So that's just like a rough layer. Okay. But yeah, the problem with that was that if you have all these items from your first playthrough, but your new character starts at level 1, and the items, they have level requirements. So your level 1 character can't use any of the cool items that you had. So I mean, and yeah, technically, if you get to the right level, then maybe you can use the items. But then you have to like save. If you want to be able to actually use the items with your next character, you have to like save all the levels of all the different tiers of items in your box, and you only have so much space. It's not ideal. So for me personally, I think one way to fix it is I would actually just make it so that maybe the items aren't actually level required. That's one of my pet peeves about RPGs, like items being having level limits. I don't really get that. Like, I think having what do you call it, like statistical limits, like say you have to have a strength of 40 or a strength of 60 or something, I can get that, but I don't really get the idea of that you have to be level such and such in order to use this weapon. Like, it just seems kind of superfluous. I don't know if that's the right word, but it just seems like it's not really necessary. Alright, so let's see what we can do here. I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get the basic colors for each layer. It's just kind of like a matte color. There we go, that worked. And once again, this is what I would do for a rough. So I'm not thinking of like a final image. This would be what I would do as a rough image, which I would then show my supervisor or whoever, and find out if that's what the direction they want me to go or not. Because once again, I was talking about the kind of cost performance or the efficiency. If you spent, like, say 2 days on a really nice drawing where it's like really well, or even a whole maybe 1 day on a drawing where you're like detailing everything and making it look really nice, and then you show it to your the head honcho or whoever it is that's responsible for supervising your work, and they don't like it, or you show it to your client or whatnot, then you just wasted like a day's worth of work. But if you can just get like a rough kind of image of it and then show it to them and they don't like it, then maybe you've only wasted, and I wouldn't even say wasted because you're working toward a goal, but like you only lost maybe I don't know, a third of a day or so, maybe an hour to 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever. And this is another cool thing about that I love about Clip Studio. I think they might have made this doable in later versions of Photoshop, but I know it wasn't back in the day. But so I can actually select all 3 of these layers. So like my line work and all of the coloring layers underneath, and then I could use the selection tool and take this and be like, I want this to be bigger, and I could at the same time change the size of all 3 layers at once. It's a little too big, something like that. And also I feel like Clip Studio is just generally lighter. It doesn't seem to use as much processing power. I never really get like lag or anything. Alright, that's a little bit better. But yeah, so that was the background of when I used to play. And now, so recently I started playing again. We played Path of Exile, Grim Dawn, a bunch of other games, and then I thought, let me go back to Diablo, because for some reason, like, I'm playing Path, and I'll probably go back to Path again after this, but like for some reason they didn't, Path of Exile and those other games, they didn't seem to give me as much enjoyment as the first time I played Diablo, and I don't really know why. Well, I have some ideas now after coming back to it, but I wanted to figure out why, so that's why I went back to Diablo to kind of play through again. And so recently I've been playing through that, and I started this monk character, and I was playing through on adventure mode, and I was playing through, I like killed Diablo, I killed Malthael, got to like level, I don't know, 60 or something, I don't remember. Well, you get lag at 1200 DPI, which is an overkill. Well, I never used 1200 DPI. Oh, do you mean in Clip Studio? Yeah, in Clip Studio I imagine at 1200 DPI you probably would get some lag, but that is definitely overkill. Like I think the most I've ever seen used, even like professionally, is like 400 at the most, maybe 500. I don't know. Oops, that's the wrong layer. No, it isn't. It is the right layer. Okay. Okay. Cool. Let's get some of the bluish colors. Yeah, this is gonna take longer than it usually would for me, because if I was doing my own design, I wouldn't put this many different layers and colors all over the place. But since, like I said before, since this is a design that's done over many hours of different people designing each element of each equipable item, it adds up to a lot of detail and a lot of different colors and things. So actually, I'm doing this as a, yeah, I forgot, I'm doing this as a rough. So let me just put this all into one layer, else it's going to take forever if I'm trying to actually like separate every layer, separate it layer by layer and whatnot. Okay, so get our basic colors down. And I'm just alt picking the colors from the image, but I'm also lighting them up a little bit, because the image has shading and coloring and what not shading, coloring. I mean, the image has a specific lighting that doesn't necessarily complement the matte color scheme that I'm using. So I'll select the color, and then I would probably lighten it up a bit. Red here. Okay, I'll get some gray here. But yeah, so I played through with this character, and then I realized that I couldn't do rifts or something, because I had to actually beat Diablo on story mode first, and I was playing on a new server, so I didn't have my old data of beating the game before back in the day. So I was like, okay, well I guess I gotta beat Diablo. So then I went back and I made the this witch hunter character here, and I played through with her and beat Diablo and Malthael on hardcore expert mode, and that was pretty fun. And I think I might actually go since I've done that now. I've unlocked torment mode, so I might go through and try to play through on torment mode for the first time, because I've never actually done torment mode before. And I'll probably put that on my Twitch channel. If you are interested in watching some game let's plays, go and subscribe to Yazuki Wolf on Twitch. I used to do a monthly. I was originally planning to do monthly video game live streams over here, but as things have progressed, I'm realizing that I think I need to be a little more focused on with my content here, and I feel like the gaming stuff the gaming let's plays rather, or live streams may be better to put in a separate place. So I'm probably gonna just put those on Twitch for the time being. All right, so this is looking a little boring because I don't have any shading or whatnot. So let's go ahead and skip ahead to the shading phase, just to kind of give this some, what's the word? Some degree of shape and form, because otherwise we're gonna be stuck on all these little details of all the different colors interacting with each other forever. So there's just so much stuff going on here. I mean, look at that. There's like all these like little patterns and like different leathers on top of there's like leather on top of metal on top of leather rather, with like cloth and all this stuff. So let's get to actual shading. 480p. I would watch on Twitch, but I can't really watch anything higher than 360p, maybe 480. Well, I'm not sure what I'm using. I'll look into that. So 360 to 480 is a good range then. I'm not actually sure what I was recording on. I'll have to look into my settings afterwards. I'm kind of bad at paying attention to specific like tech-based settings, because I tend to just want to get into what I'm doing. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I'm kind of haphazard about the way I set things up sometimes, which I probably need to get better at if I'm going to be doing YouTube. So I might be at 720. I don't know. Have to look into that. Alright, so what I'm doing now is I have a new layer that I'm putting as Joseon. I believe that's multiply. So it's a multiply layer. I'm just going to go over this whole layer and darken up the areas that's where I want to have shadows. And I'm doing this all in one color. If I was doing it as a final piece, I probably would pick a specific shadow color for each different layer, or each different color. But since I want to conserve time, I'm not going to do that here. And since this is a rough, rather. And actually, you know, let's start start with a large brush at first, and we'll get the very large areas where I think shadows are going to be. So like this area should kind of be shadowy, shadowy. So I'm not getting into the detailed areas right now, just getting the large shadows. Then use my watercolor to smooth that out. Well, so one layer for shadow. Well, so I do when I'm doing a rough, but for a final drawing, I would have different shadow layers for every individual color. But for the rough, you're just kind of trying to give them the idea of what the image is going to be. So in that case, as you see here, I have the one layer here. And actually, let me get rid of the colors so that it's easier to see for the time being. And this makes it a little bit faster to just get your shadows in there. And using it as a multiply means that it's going to apply to all the different colors. It's not the best solution in terms of like color theory, because really you want to have each shadow to kind of be related to the color that it's on top of. But in terms of getting just a rough image, this is generally good enough. Alright, so now let's lower the size of our brush and get more specific details in here. But you do want it at least to be on a separate layer, because having it on a separate layer means that you can then go back and kind of erase areas and return back to the mid-tone color. And I may need to clean up my line work a little bit. I think my line work is a little too messy, maybe even for a rough, but and actually, let's change the line color. I think that color is getting distracting now. Okay, so we'll get back to, yeah, that seems about right. Yeah, that already looks a bit better, I think. All right, I think that's more or less okay. You could spend, like, once again, like a image is never finished; it's just abandoned. Like I could spend forever just on the shadows, but I'm trying to get a workflow down where I can actually get things done within like the period of the stream. So not quite there yet, apparently, but it's already been an hour and I'm only this far in. But we'll see. Next up, we're gonna make a screen layer, and I'm using the exact same color I was using for the shadows, which is, I think, it's basically just a mid-tone. And now I'm just going in with highlighting. And I mentioned earlier the way that my kind of workflow with Clip Studio is, first I'm just putting down the general areas where I want the paint to be, and then later on I'm going to go back onto this with the watercolor brush and smooth things out. And then I actually would, after that, I would probably go back again with the regular paint or regular brush to work out specifically strong highlights and whatnot. Oh, what software? This is Clip Studio, Clip Studio Pro. And I had a lot to say about that earlier, but probably shouldn't repeat all of it. But let's just say that it's my new favorite. Well, not particularly new, but it is my favorite drawing software. There's numerous things that it can do that I can't do in Photoshop. I still use Photoshop for the last kind of finishing touches. The filters are really good in Photoshop. Photoshop has a lot of really good filters, but for line art and just like the way that you can control your color and your like your brushes, it's much easier workflow for me. Like as you can see right now, I switched my brush to a watercolor brush, and I'm just using that to kind of smooth out the different patches of highlight that I put on earlier. Whereas with Photoshop, I mentioned earlier, but you'd have to do a lot of like alt picking your colors. Here you can kind of get away without having to use, and I never changed the opacity of my brushes either. So that's another thing. Like in Photoshop, at least I was always constantly like pressing all the number buttons, like 1, 2, 3, 4, or whatever, just to kind of change the opacity of each brush. But here I could I just have my brushes and I know how they act and I just use them. It's more like it's similar to if you were doing traditional art. You know, you would kind of have a charcoal, and you know that charcoal behaves this way, so you just use that when you want to have that effect, and you have a ebony pencil or something for this type of effect. And so here's the same type of thing where on the, I don't know if you can see on the screen, but on the left hand side here, I have like my inking pen and my my pencil and my brush, and then within brush you have watercolor brush, oil brush, and inking brush. So you have a lot of options of how you can just grab the brush that you want for the specific effect you're going for. All right, and now now after smoothing out the colors, I'll go back again with the pencil brush and get the specific highlights that I want. But let me just smooth these out a little bit more. Okay, there we go. So now I go back to the pencil brush, and now I can come over here and be like, okay, so I have the general idea of where the light is, but now I want an actual highlight here. So I'm gonna go like this, right? And now I can get the actual highlight. Maybe get a highlight around this ridge here or something. Something there. I'll highlight this area. Okay. See, I'm really bad at finishing things in a short period of time, but I want to get better at that, and I think that's what I want to do with the stream, to kind of get something somewhat close to completion by the time we're done with this stream, so that you can kind of get an image of an idea of what we're going for. So now add the colors. I'm looking at this now. The colors are a little too saturated, I think. So I'm going to Control U that and change the saturation to something like there. Yeah, I think that looks a lot better already. See, this is before and this is after. Like I learned this from someone else's video. I forgot who it was, but generally when you're picking colors, you want to stay away from the super saturated colors. You want to stay sort of in like the upper middle range of your color wheel, unless you're going for the specific kind of saturated look. All right. So I mean, that might be more or less good enough for a rough. It's kind of a bit overly rough, maybe. So if I was doing this for work, well, honestly, if I was doing this for work, I would then probably move on to another character. Like, let's see here. Okay, so now we have our witch hunter over here, right? So I could draw this pose or this pose. I think this is a pretty good pose. I also have a couple other different equipments that I took screenshots of. Now, obviously, for work, I wouldn't be drawing my Diablo character, but I'm just relating my process to how I do when I'm at work. Yeah, there you go. That's a nice pose, but I think I like the first one the best. But yeah, so what I would do next is I would then draw the next pose or the next character, because you want to have a lot of options. And this is good enough where I can where it just at least has the general gist of what it's going to look like. And then I would go ahead and make a couple different patterns, and then I would show all 3 or 4, if I have enough time, maybe 6 different patterns, and then I would ask them which direction they want me to go in. So I think what I might do for the stream is, I think maybe for the next stream I'll do I'll do the witch hunter to about the same detail as this, and maybe I might do one more after that, and then at that point I should have 3 roughs, and I could ask you guys to select from the 3 roughs which one you want me to actually take to a further level. So this is the rough level. The next level after the rough, like just to give you an idea of where we would go after this, is I think we've kind of reached the limit of what this current line work can support. Like, this line work is very, very messy. So what I would probably do next is I would probably like switch that to blue and make a new layer, and go on top of this line work. Probably get rid of the colors because they're kind of distracting. There you go. And so what I would do if I was going to take this further is the next step I would come in here with a smaller brush now and actually start cleaning up these this line work more. And while we were doing that, we'd probably add some more details of the armor. Where is her armor? So like look into here and we see that there's all this like stuff going on with the crest there. So I would start adding things like this kind of crest thing going on here. But now this is part of what I'm talking about with being efficient with your workflow, is at this point this character hasn't been approved. And obviously this is my own personal work, but if this was at work, this character hasn't been approved. So if I were to go in here and do all these like really nice details, like getting the crest of her head here and like having all these like different like patterns in here. Actually, those patterns would probably be better to do in the coloring layer rather than the ink layer, but there we go. But if I were to go in here and get all these details like this, and then maybe go ahead and open up our color layer again, and then in the color layer I start taking like this color, and I'm gonna be like, okay, I'm gonna add this here. I'm gonna add like the details of what's going on inside of her her crest here, and I spend all that time doing that, and then I go to my supervisor, and they say, you know, you should have done the witch hunter character instead of that one. It's like, oh, okay, well I just wasted all my time now. So that's why the thing that you want to do is you want to be efficient with the way that with how far you progress with each step. So what I would do is I would, like I said earlier, I would present it to them once at around this level of detail with a couple other drawings at the same level of detail, and have them pick which one they want the most, and then I could go in and fix that. So I think this is probably about as far as I want to go with this today, although one part just kind of bothering a little bit. The lighting on here isn't quite hitting the way it should. It should be more like around here, this area. Yeah, it's a little bit better. And the lighting here too, some here. Cool. Have you tried using a 3D model in CSP? I have a couple times. It just and it seems like it has a lot of potential. I think it's just that it's kind of slowed my workflow a little bit because I was spending too much time fidgeting with it. I think if I had enough time to really learn how to use it well, so that I wouldn't actually be using that much, wouldn't actually be using too much time just fiddling, I think it does have a lot of potential to be a very useful tool. I just haven't actually invested the time to actually be able to use it without thinking about it. And as it is right now, I have to think a lot when I try to use it. I'm like, okay, so where was the button to find this thing, and then where do I do that? And a lot of the time I find that just finding reference on the internet seems to be faster for me most of the time. On a related note though, I have been trying recently to do ZBrush, and I want to actually start doing that in the streams as well, because I was doing a lot of like mecha design for a video game that came out in Japan called like, how would I describe that in English? Well, it's called Sangoku Justice, and it had a lot of like mecha design and stuff, and for that sometimes I felt like it was, instead of drawing in 2D, it actually was faster. Even though I was a 2D artist, I would do it in ZBrush in 3D, and then I would just like screen capture all the different angles and then like draw over that. And sometimes I actually felt like it was faster especially with mecha design. Probably wouldn't be faster with something like this, with like a character like this though. Like doing all this in ZBrush would take a lot of time, I would imagine. But you know, for simple like mechanical structures, especially because the way that my position worked is that I was doing art for the 3D team. So like, for example, once one of these concepts were approved that this is the way they want to go, I would have to then not only draw it in this angle, but I'd have to draw her like from the back angle. And that's why if you look down here, I have these when I did the screenshot, I actually took the screenshot from various angles. Yeah, it's like here's the back and whatnot. Because if you were to do something to hand over to a 3D artist, you would have to do the various angles of it. So I don't know, I'm in this kind of weird situation where I'm drawing something that's obviously not for work because it's an established IP, but I'm approaching it in a similar way to the way that I do things at work. I'm just noticing that her legs don't seem to be the same length. Is this leg too short maybe? Yeah, just move it down like that for now. Hey Tony, good to see you. Want to use it in my workflow. ZBrush? Oh yeah, definitely. So the thing about the ZBrush tutorials, well, there are a bunch out there if you just want to look on there, if you just want to search, because that's how I've been learning it. But I wanted to start putting on the streams, but what happened was that they bought it for me at work, and usually you're allowed to use it on 2 different computers. But for some reason, they only gave me, they only put it on my work computer, and they didn't give me like the access code. So it's like I can't put it on my home computer. So I have to ask them like, hey, can I put this on my home computer, or I have to buy it myself? I'm almost considering buying it myself because it seems like the price of it is going up as I wait. So like I was thinking about buying it for myself a while back, and when it was like $700, I'm like, oh, $700, that's a lot of money. Let me think about this. But now I went to looked recently, and now it's like $900, almost $1,000. It's like the longer I wait, the more expensive it seems to be getting. And of course, I'm using it. I have my copy at work, which if I talk to them, I might be able to use at home. But even then, if I ever like move on, or if I need to use it in different places, like it may be good to have my own copy. I don't know. You're lazy and don't have the software. Which software? ZBrush or Clip Studio? I'm assuming you mean ZBrush. Yeah, ZBrush is kind of expensive, but I think it could be worth it in the long run, just because you aren't paying monthly, like how Photoshop now with the Adobe products, you have to pay monthly now, which would be great if you just have like one little thing that you want to use it for. But if you want to use it perpetually throughout your whole life, then that's going to add up, right? Is there an educational version for ZBrush? Yeah, let me know about that. If there's something that's cheaper, I would definitely like a cheaper one, because like $1,000, that's like a whole new computer I could buy. But it is a really powerful software. I mean, you could do so much with it. I also kind of want to do something with her face here, but I don't like the reference doesn't really show much of her face. So I mean, I could have like her hair maybe. She has like her hair coming out here, and then you can see like the edges of her eyes there. I might just go through this again later and make my own version of what her face is doing, just to make it a little bit more interesting. But for now, I think that's good enough. So that is our first rough sketch. I think next time I'll do another character and maybe a third one. We'll see how long my patience, or more so your guys' patience, because if you get bored of it, let me know. I can move on to other things. But I want to have a couple different drawings done about this level. Hopefully I'll be able to get to this level in about an hour. That's what I'm shooting for, so I could do that during the stream. And then we could decide which one we want to work on more. If we want to do the monk character, or not witch hunter. That's from Warhammer. The demon hunter. Or whichever character, and then we take that to the next level where we clean up the line work and make it all just look a little bit nicer. And don't know if we'll go to completion. I'll kind of ask you guys how far you want to go, and after that we may do some other projects that I've been thinking about doing. But for now, I think we're going to call the stream there. Oh, you're going to the ZBrush site. Okay, I'll wait to see if you can come back with that. Sculptress, yeah, Sculptress. I've looked at that. That may be worth trying. It's just that I'm using ZBrush at work, and I don't want to have too many softwares to go between with the different UIs and things. But I don't know, Sculptress is free. So, although the other thing that I really like about ZBrush is, oh, and I don't think Sculptress. I don't think that's the free version of ZBrush. I think that. Wait, no, hold on a second. Sculptress, isn't that the isn't that what they call their new like brush function or something? Hold on. So what is Sculptress? Because I know that ZBrush, they had like another. Yeah, you're right. Sculptress Pro. So maybe that is the free version of ZBrush. Yeah, it is on Pixelogic's site. I thought Sculptress was what they were calling. Oh no, you're right. Yeah, this is a separate. This is a separate software. Might be worth trying. See how. I imagine this doesn't have all the functionality of the original one, but yeah, it could be worth just seeing what they have in here. The full version, and because I was looking at, there was like a smaller version that you could buy of ZBrush, and I think it was called ZBrush. I forgot what it's called, Essentials or something. And I was looking into it, and I actually emailed them about it because there's one particular thing that I want to have in the software that apparently the smaller versions don't have, that the full version has, and that is the Z modeler brush. Because the Z modeler brush is great for doing mechanical stuff. Let's see if it comes up. Hey Mikey, how's it going? Z modeler. Will this show it? Yeah, I don't know how clear this is, but you can see there's like a little cube here. The Z modeler brush is really great because it feels almost like you're just how do I describe it? It allows you to do very precise 3D work that's good for like mechanical structures and hard surface work, because you can actually like take these blocks and kind of just pull them out, extrude them, and make them larger and stuff. And so it's not just like the drawing with a brush, but you could actually like take full surfaces and extrude and expand and do all the type of stuff that you would do in like Blender or Maya, but then it's a lot more accessible than Blender and Maya, because it feels a lot like if you were, say, I don't know if any of you ever played Stonehearth. It's a new game. It's kind of similar to like Minecraft, where you have like these like blocks that you just kind of like build up and make structures with them, and it feels very similar to that, and it's very intuitive how it works. And so this is like the functionality that I really want, but apparently this is only in the full version from what I've heard when I emailed them. So if I want this, I may have to just spend like the $1,000 for the full version. Not that I have a whole bunch of money to spend on this right now, but could be worth it in the long run. Oh, academic price is $475. Is that a full software? All right, well, I'll talk to you later. If I could get it for $475, I'd buy it like right away. Like it's definitely worth that price, I think. But anyways, it's getting a little bit late in the day now, and I need to get some lunch. So please let me know any thoughts that you have about the stream. If you want me to work on different things, also let me know what videos. Oh, one last thing, in case you didn't hear last week, I did start a new channel where I'm teaching Japanese. So if you want to, I'll put a link in the description as soon as I finish the stream. But it's a new channel. I'm calling it Japan Quest right now. I may change the name in the future, but it is it's going to be teaching hiragana and katakana for reading Japanese. It's also going to be teaching just like some simple lessons where I call them virtual study abroad lessons, where you go to like a Japanese website or a Japanese comic, and we just kind of look through of what Japanese you can see there. Originally I was talking about teaching Japanese on this channel, but I decided that since it's a kind of a niche subject for people that are only specifically looking to learn Japanese, I went ahead and put that on a new channel. So if that is what you are interested in, go ahead and subscribe to that. I'll put the link in a moment, or you could just type in Japan Quest channel or Benkyokai. And I'll put a link in the description if you're interested in that. So that is all for today. Thank you all for joining. You've made it a wonderful session. And until next time, keep drawing, live boldly, and be creative. Bye-bye.